All right, it's 5:30. Let's call this January 4th, 2022 meeting of the Civil Aviation Board to order. We start out with roll call.
Member King,
Here.
Chairman Curtis,
Here.
Vice Chairman Leslie,
Here.
Member Verdal,
Here.
Member Elbis, Mayor Morris, and Member Martinez.
Here.
Fantastic. We have a quorum. Has everybody had a chance to approve the minutes from the December 7th meeting? If so, do I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes. I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded, and so all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Wonderful. Let's move into the Airport Director's Report. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and board members. Start off with the airport fencing project update. The notice of to proceed has been signed and sent back. They're expecting to start construction on that project January 17th. So we're on track. The runway 1230 Pappy Lighting Project. We had the winning bidder, Bigsby Electric out of Albuquerque. The lowest bid was more than the grant, so we got to send a letter to State Aviation to request additional funding. That'll be going up to commission this Thursday for approval.
Is that normally something that's approved?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and so, yeah, it's the state has already agreed to the additional funding. So the formal process is our city commission has to approve the revised grant agreement. And so once they approve the revised grant agreement, then we can move forward with the project.
Thank you for that explanation.
The self-serve fuel station, again, the project was delayed due to COVID issues. Electrical work was completed today. All the piping is completed. We're just waiting on state inspection for the new piping and the install of the station itself. We're expecting the project to be fully complete in 2 weeks. And on the next slide, I got a picture of what it looks like right now. So I've talked to AvFuel, and we're planning on putting signage out there that'll be lit and say self-serve. The old self-serve sign that's by, I can't remember. It's by one of the hangars where the old self-serve used to be. We're going to see if we can repurpose that entire thing and just move it over there to where the self-serve is and kind of reuse what's still standing in the wind. So obviously it's strong enough. So we're going to try to repurpose that.
Was that sign lighted at any point in time?
I'm not sure. It looked like it possibly could have been, but all you got to do is run some wire through it and we'll get it done. The airfield marking project, we were going to use state pricing agreements, but that expired in November after the RFP, after the decision was made to do it that way. So we're waiting on the new pricing agreements to be approved by the New Mexico legislature. And once that's done, we'll be ready to go on that project.
Is that marking the entire airfield?
Yes. Minus one portion that we'll talk about later. The airport equipment building, there's really been no progress once they laid the concrete. They're also having some medical COVID type issues. So all the concrete and the bases, everything is done. It's just the guys that erect the buildings, they're out. So we're kind of slowed down on that project. We're having a race between who's going to get finished, the self-serve or the building. So just try to make things a little fun. New Mexico state grants. We have been offered 4 grants so far this year. One is for purchase of lighted X's. The other one is for new airport seating, which will allow more seats in the airport terminal. Another is for GPU, ground power unit, and the 4th one is to repair the T-hanger doors.
How many of the doors can be repaired for the 45,000?
All of them, all of the T-hanger doors. We had Nick Grego come out and they walked around all of the T-hangers. They took a look at it. He brought out his door guy, he called him, and they assessed and they said, we can make all these doors right, and he gave us a price.
I see. So once we get the doors repaired, then do we have, we talked about at our last meeting that we were gonna remove the 2 oldest sets of hangers. Is that?
I'm working on grants for the rest of the projects.
Okay.
The state has some questions on how the hangars got in the condition they're in, that we need to answer before they will put money into it. I've already gave them my annual upkeep plan, I'll call it, for the hangars once they're up to normal, and they like it. They just want to know what happened,
Okay.
especially with the concrete floors and the newer hangars.
And that's something that I'm gonna go out and look at as far as the integrity of the floors themselves. And I mean, we all know concrete cracks and we try to control where it cracks, but I haven't put eyes on it yet, so I don't know if it's heaving or what exactly it looks like. So we're gonna go out and take a look at that, James and myself.
And are we still looking, is it realistic as a July 1 date to get this rolling
The repairs?
on the hangars? Yes.
Oh, soon as the grant comes through, we'll be ready to go.
Fantastic.
So we'll start with the doors. I gave them a priority list, and I told them the doors were priority 1, then the floors, then the installation, and then painting. So that's the priority list I developed for the state. So they're looking to see if they'll be able to fund it all in 1 year or 2 in 1 year, or break it out in multiple years. So I'm just waiting to hear back from them. Once we get the doors together and all the rest of our projects completed, then we'll start looking at doing other things with the hangars.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question. You mentioned an airport maintenance plan. That's the first I've heard of something like that. Is that something new that's going to be implemented going forward? Does that drive the need for more employees, more hours, costs?
It is something new. With the new
Asset management plan?
asset management plan, I knew he was going to do. I knew he would do it. We're going to implement all of that into there, and we're going to come up with okay, January 1. Here's all the things we need to grease, we need to oil, paint. It's going to be all in that plan. So we'll all get notified when it's time to do maintenance, when we got to do oil changes on the generators, or anything. It'll all be put in there, and it's good that the cities come down with the asset management plan.
As part of that software program, what it does is create work orders. And so if it's routine work orders, it'll automatically start pushing those out depending on how you set them up. And so that is one of the nice features of this software program that the City Commission approved us moving forward with. And so once we obviously load in assets, we're able to track all those assets, but we're also able to track those work orders and create those work orders that generates that work to be done.
Okay. Is that a software program that's going to be implemented citywide across all departments, including the airport?
Yes, sir. Absolutely is.
Seems to me that would go a long ways with the state to ensure their concerns.
Absolutely, and I mean, it was a commitment that the city commission made, as far as the cost of the software itself, and so, but we see the benefits in it from, upkeep of our existing equipment, knowing what assets we have, the life expectancy of those assets, replacement costs, and so I think it's gonna be something fantastic that benefits the entire city in the future. And it's good, but it's gonna take time. When you're implementing this type of software over 14 different departments, it doesn't come quickly. And so it definitely takes time to build those databases, to import those databases, to check those databases, making sure that everything's working correctly, training staff and on how to utilize the software system itself. So it's not going to be next month to implement it, but it's something that we've already started. And honestly, it takes probably about a year to get it fully implemented.
Mr. King, is that the same software that you use?
I don't believe it is. The software that we use is provided by the state, but it's probably a different software.
This is Tyler Technologies is the company, and they provide municipal software packages.
I see.
Yeah,
Good. Thank you.
absolutely.
All good.
FAA grant. We've also been offered an FAA grant that will be a multi-million-dollar grant. It's to reconstruct the northern portion of Taxiway Alpha. If you remember, we did Taxiway South over last year. Taxiway Alpha North is probably in worse shape than Taxiway Alpha South. So it's going to be a full reconstruction. We're going to add some strength to it so we can get some bigger aircraft in, cargo aircraft, wink, wink. And when they do that project, they're also going to do a, what is that thing called? Surface seal on the main runway, runway 422. It's got some cracks that goes pretty deep. When we got those rainstorms, you could see bubbles coming up, which means that the cracks go beyond the subgrade. So they're going to do a surface seal, and in 3 years, they're going to look at doing a full reconstruct on the main runway also, which will add more strength, and we'll be able to land some of those C-130s that fly over all the time.
And fuel them up too.
Yes, hopefully. I'm working on contract fueling. That way we can actually provide some fuel to the
That
military.
grant is available immediately, and they're going to get started when?
Right now, we're working, Moles and Corbin is working on the engineer's estimate to send back to the FAA. Once the FAA gets it, it goes up through their approval process, and then that's when they submit a official grant offer.
And what's the timeline that usually takes?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, once we have the engineer's estimate, then they'll go back and look at available funding and whether or not they could fund it through this year or next year. And so they don't have a set timeline on things like that. It's mainly like, hey, we've got some money.
This one's kind of different
Yeah.
because they went, hey, I got extra money. What do you need? And I said, this is what we need. So I tried to get the runway done now, but I say the project should kick off the end of this year, maybe right after summer, because this one's on a fast track. They're trying to get it funded before the end of the fiscal, which is in September.
And you may mention at the special session, what was approved for state aviation?
Oh, State Aviation received $10 million from the federal government.
American Recovery Plan?
Yeah,
funding?
no, this was the what's the new bill that just passed? I can't-
The infrastructure bill.
Infrastructure
We'll just call
bill.
it that.
Yeah. So, State Aviation received $10 million, and I'm trying to get as much as I can from it.
If you strengthen the taxiway and don't, at this time, don't strengthen the runway, can you still land a C-130 on it?
We can land a C-130 technically now, but the Air Force won't do it because we're right at their minimums. we run into more problems with just landing it. Right now, the taxiways couldn't hold up. They can land on the runway, but the taxiway won't hold them.
And that's what I think I was asking. Once we get the taxiway redone, the C-130s could use it as it,
They still won't because our runway is at their threshold. They won't even risk it.
okay.
But I see it as a good sign. So if state aviation wants to strengthen our taxiway, I mean, obviously the next step is why we have a really good, strong taxiway if you don't have a really good, strong runway. And so I think it's laying the foundation for us being able to move on to the next step in the process, which is to, when they redo the runway itself, to get that strengthened up too.
Great. Thank you.
To update you on employments, last month we saw 1,078 employments, which is, as you can tell, is the highest, which brings us to 6,663 on the year, and just shy of our 10,000 employment mark.
Fantastic. That's extremely exciting, and I have no doubt that good things are to come.
I mean, look at January where there was 174 employments, or, I mean, February. I mean, obviously, as the aviation industry in general and passenger service started to pick back up and was allowed to pick back up, we saw that in our numbers. I mean, if you had 4 more months of, a couple hundred passengers each, we could be there. And so I think this is very exciting for Clovis Regional Airport.
Does that conclude your report?
Almost.
Proceed.
You gotta go with fuel sales. Last month we sold 1,807.9 gallons of avgas and 17,572.1 gallons of Jet A, which brings our yearly total gallons moved of 151,599.5 gallons of av fuel at the airport. Denver Air in the month of November has purchased 9,320 gallons of Jet A from us. That's just November. So they'll take 400 gallons a time a day. But they kind of slowed down on the fuel, so we're working our way to get them back to getting more gas. And next slide is just our current fuel prices versus the region and the nation.
Excuse me just a second, James. I have a question for Mr. Burns.
Yes. Well, not the city. The state.
So I can't answer your direct question. I know from like gasoline sales, we get a certain very small amount of gasoline tax.
The same case at the Phillips 66 on Main Street?
Correct.
City sales tax in there? I'm curious.
It's just the gas tax in general.
Yeah.
And then it's not broken out. We get a certain portion of that. I think the state collects and we get, correct.
So there is a little bit coming back from the aviation.
I'm not sure on aviation fuel. I know there is for gasoline, but I'm not sure on aviation fuel. I know
There's
the
a-
state
there's a
collects
s-
tax, but
There's a state and a federal tax on avgas and a separate tax on Jet A. And then we have our markup on that, so.
that's a fantastic question. I'll research it and definitely get back to y'all because it's a great question.
So there's our current fuel pricing versus the region and the nation. And I also added what our self-serve pricing would be if we had self-serve operating right now.
What's the estimated time to operation? Operational status, I guess I should say.
They're waiting on the inspections, and he told me it should take another 2 weeks.
Since we've been waiting since August. We're ready.
Patient.
Mr. Harris, thank you for your continued efforts to pay attention to funding opportunities for our airport and things that you continue to bring to the table to add value to our regional airport. They're greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I see no old business. Do we have any new business from any members? Questions, comments, further discussion on anything? With that being said, I think we've covered it all, and we're going to adjourn till 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. Thank you, guys.